Design is a really interesting thing because it's really the application of human creativity to solve a problem. But for me personally, and I think for V&A Dundee, it is those extraordinary, exquisite things that some of the most creative minds in the world have thought about. It's also our social history. It tells the stories of who we've been, who we are at the moment, and who we're going to be as a society. So design is about the stuff that we hold, we dress in, the places we live, what we gather around ourselves to create our own identities as people.
So up we come.
Wow, it's incredible.
Isn't it marvellous?
Oh, this is great. You can see the whole city. It's beautiful. What a view.
V&A Dundee is Scotland's design museum. We're a young design museum, and that just means that we can be so ambitious and think really creatively about how we engage people with design through all that we do.
Right, so our robot's called Bebop. He's a robot to prevent loneliness and isolation in schools.
And the brain.
And he's got a brain. There we go. That's fab.
The Schools Design Challenge is a design project for S1 and S2 pupils, which was encouraging them to take a problem that they might face in their day-to-day lives and to use the design process to come up with a solution.
It's called the social hive because it's a bit like hexagons to represent like a beehive.
The point with this was to combat loneliness, so being able to play with other people and things that you like will bring people together.
This was perhaps their first real experience of what a design museum is, but more importantly, it opened their eyes to what design can be.
The learning programme creates lots of entry points for people to explore design and to apply design to their own lives. We started to work with Kindred Clothing, who are part of a charity called Front Lounge in the Hilltown in Dundee, and that's a social empowerment project.
Look how messy it is on the back, but how cute it could be in there.
Before Kindred and coming to the V&A for all the projects, I just didn't do anything. It was just a mum, going to baby group, and that was it really.
We got offered loads of different fabrics to work with. We learnt all these different techniques. We're using threads and hand embroidery. Yeah, the teal as well would be nice. The confidence it's brought out in me is really amazing.
A lot of community groups come in and they don't appreciate what they're really capable of. So being able to see them surprise themselves, to see their skills grow and their connection with each other grow is always really rewarding. Where I want to be is that we're an asset for the community, that people see us as an accessible partner and feel that they can come to us with an approach and that we will be a supportive team.
It's hard to truly define what the Young People's Collective is. For me, it's a platform for young people to have their voices heard within the gallery, but also provide experiences and opportunities you wouldn't otherwise have had. We helped co-design the opening ceremony for the museum, being asked for opinions, given suggestions, and they felt that they were all taken very seriously. Through all that, I now find myself on the board for V&A Dundee. It feels very much we're all in it together, we're all trying to figure out what we want, and we're all working together towards a goal.
Everybody a round of applause, thank you.
I realise that that is an important step and a really powerful thing to have. You want a young person's voice, get them in the room when decisions are being made and having their voices literally heard.
There is a lot of opportunity related to the museum, which were not there in the past. And for the people that are getting graduated now, I think it's such a comforting thing for them, because if we want to change mentality, we have to educate people. And I think it's been great to have this place somewhere to grow.
I've never worked in an organisation with such a sense of the difference it can make, such a sense of energy, that it can be world-class and deeply local at the same time. I can see the change that we make every day. I can see the way that audiences react when they come in, but also the way that we work in alliance with the city's wider aims. It's just amazing to be part of a young organisation that's utterly committed to the potential and joy that design is.
I think it's helped expand a part of my creative mind. Creating stuff like this can help with dreams that I pursue.
Good morning. I'm delighted this week to be meeting with Leonie Bell, who is in charge of all things to do with the V&A Dundee. She is the director who joined them in 2020 to bring the vision of the V&A Dundee to life and take it forward. And it's a very exciting time right now with a wonderful new exhibit that's just opened called Tartan. But before we get to that, Leonie, could you tell us how the V&A moved north to Scotland, and now Dundee has this wonderful cultural centre right in the heart of Scotland?
Thank you, Camilla, and hello, everybody. Hello from very sunny Dundee. So V&A Dundee opened in September 2018, so we are 5 this year, so still a very young museum, but actually the idea is probably about 12 years old, and there's lots of different tales of whose idea it was, but the one that I always retell is that the University of Dundee is a really international university, centre of excellence in research for many, many subjects. And the people in charge of the university 12 years ago recognised that actually in order to retain talent, attract talent, develop talent, both within its student body and its staff, having a really major cultural organisation really helped a city to regenerate. So at the same time, the V&A in London was thinking about, what does the word national mean? What do they do with all their collections that aren't always on show, that are often kept in stores? So that was also happening. And then, of course, Dundee, it's a really little city. It's a small city by the river. So it's a trading city, a textile city, a shipping city. So always been a city of design, really. And it was awarded in 2014 UNESCO UK City of Design status, and it remains the only UNESCO City of Design in the United Kingdom. So for those 3 reasons, an incredible partnership across political divides, public sector, business, third sector, all came together and committed to developing a V&A in Dundee, and it became known as Scotland's Design Museum. An international architectural competition was held, and the Japanese architect Kengo Kuma won it and has created a fantastic bit of world-class architecture for us by the banks of the River Tay.
It really is the most stunning building that you approach from the heart of Dundee and just suddenly see. It really is fabulous. And could you tell us a little bit about what was the vision for the collection? It was to be the centre of design excellence. And did you draw from the collections in the south and bring them up, or did you start from scratch?
A bit of both. So the vision was to be a centre for design and to be Scotland's national design museum. So there is other museums with design collections across Scotland, but there's not one dedicated entirely to design. And as a very small country, as many of your viewers and listeners will know, Scotland's really done very well in terms of innovation throughout the last few hundred years. So Scotland's influence in the world of design is profound, whether that is the telephone or whether that is penicillin or whether that is tartan, which we'll come to later. So it was really just felt that actually Dundee could be the perfect home for that. And actually the architectural vision and the organisational vision are really wedded together. So Kengo Kuma then won the competition, and he's created a very contemporary building. On the one hand, it's inspired by the coastal cliffs of Scotland. On the other hand, it also is evocative of a ship. There's a ship, the Discovery, next to us, but we are part of a huge regeneration plan, 25-year strategy to regenerate Dundee from post-industrial to, a city of the future, I suppose. So the river has been knitted back together with the urban heart, the city centre, as you say, as well. So we have multi-responsibilities, I guess, but our very core mission is that we believe firmly in the potential of design to improve people's lives. We also believe that Scotland has a unique and extraordinary design history that needs to be told from within Scotland. And then we also celebrate our architecture and celebrate the city. So within V&A Dundee, Ken Gokuma's architectural vision was to create absolutely a 21st century museum and something he described as a living room for the city. So he didn't want it to be an austere museum that was intimidating. He didn't want it to just be about objects on plinths up high with a caption. That's part of what we do, but he also wanted it to be more dynamic. So our spaces are quite unusual. So you walk in and there's a huge void that welcomes you, where the floors kind of hug the side of the building. The ground floor is smaller than the first floor because the building's also the feat of engineering as well as architecture. It hovers out over the ground and the river to create more space upstairs. So we have lots of interesting circulation spaces, I suppose, but we also program them. And then we have a permanent collection called the Scottish Design Galleries, where we tell centuries of design history from Scotland. It's really, really varied, and 65% of that roughly is drawn from the V&A collection in London, which is extraordinary. There's nowhere like the V&A in London in the world. So we draw on their collection and tell this incredible story of Scotland, from textiles, gaming, architecture, engineering, furniture, glass. It's all in there. Everything is in there. And then we get right up to the 21st century. And then we're also home to Scotland's biggest museum exhibition spaces, which is where Tartan is. So we're really empowered, and we're not in Glasgow or Edinburgh, we're in Dundee, a small city north of what we call the Central Belt, where we can host the country's biggest design shows. And then we've got much smaller exhibition spaces, which we change over at a much faster pace. And then we've got a huge centre for learning all the time, but also we're committed to learning as a lifelong pursuit. So we have different spaces active with different sorts of people all the time. So a busy space, but also a space where if you want to find quiet reflection and look at the water, you can.
Leonie, people, I think that the fact that this is now making Dundee an even greater destination than it was, and a destination you have to go to, it brings people to the heart of a very beautiful part of Scotland that they don't always think to go to. And this East Coast, and where Dundee sits, is beautiful, and really one of the sort of hidden gems of your visit to Scotland, if you're a new person visiting for the first time. And I think this is going to make it such a greater destination for tourism, isn't it?
Absolutely, I completely agree. Lots of people have Edinburgh in their minds when they think of coming to Scotland, or they have the Highlands or the Islands or Glasgow if they want to sort of have a city that's a little bit edgier perhaps. And all of that is true. They are incredible places, but Scotland is so small. I mean, you can travel Scotland and see so much of it in a few days or in a week, and all of it, for a small country, it's really incredible. And Dundee is really unusual in that it's a south-facing city. So we also claim to be Scotland's sunniest city. It might be a little bit chillier than our West Coast counterpart in Glasgow, but it is, we really, really get these most amazing sunsets. Those of us that live here, and I've moved back here after nearly 27 years away, I was born here, brought up in Northeast Fife, and actually you just forget the power of those sunrises and sunsets. Yet you also have access to an incredibly upbeat and creative city that you can get about by foot, on your bike, by bus, or you can also drive. Like, you're in St Andrews, the home of golf, with a fantastic university and a wonderful castle within 20 minutes. You're up the Angus coast within 30 minutes. You're in Edinburgh in just over an hour, and the same with Glasgow. So absolutely, Dundee's this kind of place that's not always been known, but we really, really feel is up and coming. And, we've just got such heart and soul here.
No, I love the whole of that East Coast. And I think that the more attention we can bring to that, the better. And between Carnegie's home, just
Absolutely,
up the road,
yeah,
and then yourselves. So we've got Dunfermline, we've got you. I mean, it's fantastic.
It is amazing. And we also love that Carnegie's other home, of course, was in New York. So there's all these ties that bind, isn't there?
Oh, you're very tied into that. Exactly. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, of course, is Tartan. This incredible exhibit that you have put together that's long overdue. It really is, it takes the whole journey. And you show the contemporary with the way Tartan is used and interpreted in so many different ways now. I love the fact that you also mention how it's on as an Xbox, as well as on the inside jacket of, get a Graham McTavish, or used by Chanel or Dior. But it also is the designers, and we're going to talk later to Siobhan Mackenzie, who's one of the most cutting edge young Scottish designers we have. But you really tell the gamut. So how did all this come together? And it runs now through till January next year?
Yeah, so we opened it a few weeks ago, at the beginning of April, and we just wanted to give it a really, really long run so that, because we also felt that people are going to come from near and far to see this exhibition. And it's really interesting that you say it's been a long time coming, because if I'm really honest, I'm not sure if a design museum would even have entertained the notion of doing an exhibition on tartan that seriously even 10 years ago. I think tartan became quite mired in kitsch and maybe an unpopular form of nostalgia, but actually the way we saw it, and a lot of what we've done has been inspired by, just wait for my prop, this great book by Professor Jonathan Fairs, who's a fashion historian. He wrote this first edition in 2008. It's been reprinted for the exhibition, but he was really the first fashion historian over 10 years ago to say tartan is a really, really serious textile. There isn't really another textile in global terms that has operated and behaved in the way that tartan has. From being at home on the backs of punks as it is in princesses, on the walls of palaces as it is on people that kind of saw themselves as real radicals politically. So this kind of idea of duality comes through. So when we were thinking about what we could do, being 5, we were very drawn to Jonathan's incredible book. And then we've expanded some of the ideas within that and actually introduced some new ones as well. So yeah, we look at and position tartan as Scotland's greatest cultural icon, a cultural phenomenon, a textile that had, I suppose, quite lowly Highland humble craft roots, where it was developed to keep you warm through all the seasons and, you know, the weather that Scotland can throw at you. It's made from a very coarse textile. It was dyed by the plants that were close at hand and underfoot, with a very, very structured grid that actually is the thing that defines tartan. Yet somehow it's kept on finding new ways of blooming anew in the hands of design. Absolutely. And it's literally been to the moon and back. So from this Highland humble craft, it's been to the moon and back. We also say it's never really been out of fashion. You can't really find a sustained period of time where it's not being used by the greatest fashion houses, whether that's in Scotland or, as you were saying, within Dior, Chanel, Gucci. All of them regularly visit the minds of tartan to find something contemporary and classic, something traditional and innovative. It's happy in all of those forms. And you're right, there's some really interesting contemporary designers in it. Absolutely love that we've got Eilish McColgan, a Scottish runner's kilt that Siobhan Mackenzie designed for. You know, Eilish is a Dundee girl too, and her mum was a famous runner too. She's an incredible role model for the city and for Scotland. We've got the kilt that Siobhan designed for her. And what I absolutely love is we've also got a hair scrunchie. And that hair scrunchie, you know, is an item of quite everyday sort of, you know, culture, but it's right next to a Vivienne Westwood suit from the late 70s. So there's no hierarchy. There's a backdrop of incredible fashion, Highland costume, both male and female. There's haute couture, but we haven't presented a hierarchy. There is Jimmy hats, there is football strips, there is shortbread tins. There's all this kind of textile, all these textile tales told, if you like, but also we show that tartan is now applied to almost every imaginable surface. It's used to inspire architecture. It's used to inspire interiors, tourism, souvenirs, film, theatre, performance, music. Tartan actually, in terms of having a structure, knows no bounds, even though it has this really good structure. And you're right, we've got Scotland's oldest known bit of tartan within the exhibition, and we've got a really up-to-date Xbox as well. So there's really, we kind of, you know, it sounds a wee bit trite, but we really believe there's something for everyone, and it really, really does position tartan as absolutely unique and actually quite puzzling. It's puzzling to all of us that how can one material, one textile just have so much life and endurance?
Well, the thing is that I don't know if everybody understands that a tartan tells a story.
Absolutely. It's literally woven in so many stories, so many emotional. And so there's a kilt there with mud still on from a First World War battle. You know, there's real moments of emotional punctuation in the exhibition where it really stops you in your tracks, no matter whether you're a traditionalist or you identify with the punks of the 70s. There's something actually that I think really makes you think about the way that the stuff that we surround ourselves with, either, you know, as individuals, families, as communities, whatever those communities are, how it's the stuff that we make that actually captures the stories of who we are and who we want to be. It's a rigorous show, but also I think a really emotional one and occasionally fun too.
Well, we're looking forward to being able to visit with you more.
Can't wait to show you
more of what is going on at the V&A Dundee. And so before we close, can you tell us what is coming up? What else have you got in your plans? Because I think you were talking when you were in New York the other week, when it was wonderful to have a chance to meet you and chat with you, was that you would love to see this tour, the Tartan exhibit tour.
Absolutely. Nothing would actually make us happier. So we're going to work on that, and we really, really hope to tour it. And actually being in New York was such an incredible experience for all of us, Camilla, meeting you and your colleagues, just making so many friends in your amazing city. But, you know, it just really felt to us that North America could be a home for the Tartan exhibition, but also so could many other places in the world. So we're doing a lot of work right now to work out the logistics and the practicalities of touring a show of that scale. There's over 300 objects in that scale. You know, as everybody who goes to museums and galleries knows, you can't keep everything on show. Things have to go into conservation and all those sorts of things. But there's so many things that could continue to tell those stories. It feels like a global story. It feels like a story that deserves to be told within the walls of V&A Dundee, but also for it to have a life way beyond the walls of V&A Dundee too. So we're working on that. So more on that to come, absolutely. So we've got it on for quite a long time, but then we're going to do a really classic V&A show next. We're going to take and host the exhibition called Kimono, which will come from Paris to V&A Dundee. Will be the last stop on that. A really short run because it was cut short by COVID, so it was only on in London for 6 weeks, and it is an unbelievably rich and exquisite exhibition. And for us, we're just really, really keen that we can do things that really also celebrate our Japanese DNA. We feel like a little bit of Japan and Dundee on the east coast of Scotland because of Kengo Kuma. So we're really excited about having that exhibition next. But we continue to do small things as well. So we've got another show looking behind the scenes of the fashion show, which opens in June. A fashion illustrator called Ian R. Webb. We're looking at his personal collection where he'd be behind the scenes of some of the most incredible kind of catwalk performances, if you like, over the last 20 years. So if anybody listening or watching can come, there'll be so much on at V&A Dundee to entertain you. Well,
the thing about the Scots, where they were great travelers, and they went east, and they went west.
They did,
and so this kimono exhibit has so many other connections with Glover and so many other people. It will be fantastic to hear what you get up to with that, because
we'll keep you up to date.
But thank you so much for spending time with us. And can people can go to your website to learn about the hours and the times around Tartan, and maybe we can entice you back to New York to do some talks alongside the book and all the
it really wouldn't take very much enticing to get any of us back to New York. And I'm sure Jonathan would like to come as well, absolutely. So our website is www.vanamuseum.act.uk/Dundee. But if you just Google V&A Dundee, you'll get directly to our website and all the information's there. We've got a great Instagram account as well. People are on that, and we're active on Twitter and Facebook. And I believe we're also very active on TikTok.
All right. Well, we're so glad to catch up with you and start our conversations with the V&A Dundee. This is fantastic. Thank you, Leonie, for making the time for us this morning.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm delighted today that I'm able to be joined by Chris Hunt, a good friend to the American Scottish Foundation, a leading activist within the textile and tartan world and fashion world. And I felt it was really important, Chris, that we talk to you today in regard to the wonderful V&A exhibit that has opened in Dundee, Tartan, as who better to give us an insight into this than you. So over to you for a few minutes to talk to us a little bit about the exhibit.
Oh, thank you for such an amazing introduction, Camilla. I'm a huge fan of the American Scottish Foundation and the work you do, Camilla. It's a really important, cross-country platform, which is extremely. It's one of the things that really comes through from V&A Dundee's Tartan. My first interaction with the cloth, obviously just growing up, of it, But when I started working in the industry about 25 years ago, you discover, you know, all the ins and outs and the intricacies of it. And I think one of the things that V&A Dundee have really, really managed to do, apart from the beautiful plays, they've really thought deep about some of the exhibits. For example, Olubi Thomas, Scottish designer, now lives in London, worked with a Glasgow-based weaving studio, Viva, which is run by Christopher McAvoy and Chantal Allen, on creating a new tartan, which actually reflects his kind of, it's called Intersectional Family, and it's in green and white, which is based on both the Nigerian flag and Glasgow Celtic Football Club. And I think the installation, they involved a designer called Jolene Guthrie, who is a knitwear designer that's been in our annual Scottish Fashion Festival that we do with V&A Dundee. And I think that, for me, was one of the exhibits that just really summed up the thought that had gone into the exhibition. You know, you've got local contemporary designers working together with designers who are now, you know, working in London to do a piece. And that was just for one piece that's in this fantastic show. I mean, and there's 300. So all of that was just around one piece. And there are there's 299 other pieces to look at. So I think that, for me, kind of encapsulates how exciting it is, as well as the perspective. You know, that's a contemporary piece. And then we've got things like the Glen Affric tartan, which is proved to be, you know, there was a piece of scientific research done around that. And that's a piece of tartan that was unearthed in a peat bog about 40 years ago.
That's the oldest piece of tartan that's known, isn't it?
In the world. That's right, which comes from the original plaid. You know, we talk about plaid in America as well, hey? And that was one of the original names for what's now known as tartan. And plaid actually was part of, it's a language, you know how language changes, Gaelic and Scots and English. But plaid was a sort of a word that described a piece of cloth that you would wear during the day, that you would perhaps sleep on at night, and that you would use to carry things in as well. And that was, you know, part of the origins of what became tartan. And obviously you have the different ways that it's developed over the centuries, including the infamous book, of course, that was put together, which assigned clan names and things to certain colours. So I think to cover all that is amazing.
Well, I think the other thing that's about tartan is the story that each tartan tells. And I don't know if everybody understands that. It was very much that when I was growing up, that you wore your tartan of your family, clan, or what you associated to. But now people play with it. And they say, well, today I'll wear a lilac tartan with those, because it's spring or something. They don't feel that they now can enjoy different tartans that are a fashion statement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was really interesting, you know, within the exhibition, you are able to look at, you know, tartan that was specific to military groups, for example. There's also a film from 1745, which was the BAFTA-winning film about tartan in slavery. But the fast forward and you have the punk, you have Westward, you have this adoption wholeheartedly by counterculture of this incredible fabric. And yeah, I mean, I remember, you know, when I was a teenager, my first purchase that was non-school uniform was a pair of tartan DMs. And, you know, neon tartan was a thing as well. And I think that it's a fabric that's come to mean, you know, rebellion in a lot of different ways. and it's simultaneously been used, as I say, by military people and by, you know, the royals, for example. Kinloch Anderson, who hold the royal warrant for tartan that I used to work for in Scotland, and they created a V&A Dundee tartan specifically for this as well. And you know, people are able to register through the Scottish Tartans Authority. They can create their own and things like this. And I think people are having fun with it again as well, which is really nice.
But also, you're very involved in environmental, reusable, etc. And you have a social enterprise initiative, which you touched on, which does a show every year called Scotland Redesign. But within that, and I've talked to Siobhan Mackenzie and Prickly Thistle to Claire, many of you are now suggesting people can use that old kilt, that old piece of tartan, and, you know, reimagine it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you know, we have a sort of phrase of reuse, recycle, repair, and it's something that's really, you know, it's a whole movement within the fashion industry, whereby using the skills that designers have, you can take, you know, whether it's unsold fabric or whether it's pre-loved fabric, as we say, then you know, you can reimagine it into coats. You can obviously, you know, there's good, what, 8 meters in some kilts. That's a lot of fabric, you know, you can play. And I think tartan has seen another wave come through in that. For example, Hayley Scanlon, who's one of the designers in Dundee, she has a call out if people are looking to, you know, she collects tartan fabric. So we work with Shelter Scotland, for example. We take dead stock from big fashion companies and also donations through their shops. And then we work with designers like Hayley Scanlon to redesign them into modern contemporary clothing, and then put that down the runway and put it on sale.
Oh, fantastic. So, and where would we find out more about that?
You can look on our website, which is www.redesign.scot. And also you could search for hashtag Bring Fashion Home on social media, which is our kind of shared hashtag that we use for this idea of, you know, sustainable Scottish fashion. And I think, you know, that's one of the other things that you can see in the tartan showcase. You know, Siobhan Mackenzie that you mentioned earlier, she's got a kilt in there that was is on loan actually from Ailish McColgan, because Siobhan has been designing tartans for the Commonwealth Games Scottish team.
I know.
And it really, you know, just goes to show how many different lives this fabric of Scotland has, and it's totally global in its use. It's incredible, really. Yeah, I don't think there's any other sort of pattern and fabric that, you know, can claim that. And I think that's one of the really interesting. Whenever I travel, people, oh, where are you from? Scotland, and they're like, tartan.
Well,
you know, textiles is our thing. You know.
Well, I saw also, because it was 80 degrees plus during the tartan week over here the other week, and I saw some wonderful other non-wool tartans. I have a skirt by Alexander McQueen that I love, that's sort of a chiffon skirt, which is great. But also then I saw a wonderful taffeta tartan suit that would have been put together that looked fabulous, that had been woven for these people in you know, in India or somewhere. They'd had some fabric woven for them. I mean, it doesn't just have to be on wool. And that's the thing. It's now applied to so many different things.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, Harry Nicholsby, another designer that I've worked with, who I know is very involved with Tartan Week, of course, you know, he has done the pattern on cotton or denim, linen, and his whole thing is, you know, why wear jeans? Wear kilts. which I love. And, it is something that then gets picked up by Gautier. And I remember having a really passionate discussion, shall we say, with Hilary Alexander, bless her, rest in peace. She passed away recently, but a few years back, and she was like, Gautier, McQueen, everybody loves tartan, as she would do. And I said, yes, but the fabric, where does the fabric come from? Are they buying it? Are the brands buying it and sourcing it in Scotland? And of course, we had to look into that actually to check. And I think what I see now from an industry perspective, as you say, there is, you can, Shawthorne Mackenzie did a fabulous men's collection in silk, which she put down the runway in V&A Dundee. And, you can, Prickly Thistle are looking at how we can make, they've got a project with Johnsons of Elgin, looking at how we can make Scottish yarn into to being suitable for clothing as opposed to sort of blankets and because it's wool yarn's obviously quite heavy. So there is this really a big push on making sure that the tartan is, like we call it, vertical, that it's authentic through and through. And I think that's a really interesting kind of development, whereas it is, as you say, a pattern that's traveled the world. And I think it's interesting that people are now looking for that added layer, that actually the fabric as well as the pattern.
But before we close today, and I've got so much I want to discuss with you, so we have to talk again soon.
Would love to.
I wanted to speak about something that you also mentioned is coming up, that for anybody who loves textiles, Scotland has so much to offer this summer. And one of the other exhibits that will be going on that we want to highlight is the little black dress that is going to be at the National Museum of Scotland as of July for a few months. So,
yes, that's right.
Can you tell us a little about that, and then before we close?
Of course, thank you. I think, it's, anybody listening or watching, there is a lot going on in Scotland, and if you are thinking about a trip, now is the time. We've got direct flights into Heathrow, and then you can transfer to Dundee, come and stay, and take a day trip to Edinburgh. The Beyond the Little Black Dress opens Saturday 1st of July to Sunday 29th of October. You can search online for #BeyondLBD. And of course, that starts with the iconic Chanel little black dress, which is still now, de rigueur. And that was really about taking, a maid's uniform and selling it to the aristocrats. That's where the little black dress, Chanel's little silhouette, came from. But what Georgina Ripley, the amazing curator at National Museum Scotland, has done is completely unpack the whole concept. So we've got exploration into Black British designers, the concept of black in colour and in cloth, how it's created. Also, of course, again, the role of the colour in terms of punk, it was black is a sort of synonymous, isn't it? That's the word I'm looking for, as much as tartan. So it's a really interesting time. And then you've got Dovecote Studios in Edinburgh as well, who've got Kay Fassett on at the moment. There's just a lot going on. And then the Fashion Festival is in November.
Well, I have to say, I love the East Coast of Scotland. And so to either fly into Edinburgh and then go up the coast, popping in on and looking at all that Carnegie has to offer on the way up, and then on up to Dundee, and to now Scotland's Design Museum. I mean, the V&A Dundee is the city of design.
It's a UNESCO designation. It's not something that's awarded, casually.
No.
It's real. I mean, I have lived here now for, goodness, we started talking about V&A Dundee in the textile industry about 2013, an event in Edinburgh that I organised in the Balmoral. And then, I quickly kind of just became enthused, and I ended up living here and marrying someone from here. It's a really beautiful place. It's very the East Coast is spectacular, and we've got this fantastic textile tourist trail.
And then they can either go directly to Dundee with the flights connecting from Heathrow, as you were saying, or take the coast and go up to Dundee.
The coast road is also brilliant if you can, or if you're traveling by train and things like that, from Edinburgh or from Dundee to Edinburgh, whichever way around. There's a long train that travels almost along the cliff tops and the beaches, which is really spectacular.
I love taking the train either up the west and going up to Inverness that way, or now the east side, which I think gets overlooked so often, but is absolutely fabulous. And now we have this real destination of going to Dundee. Thank you, Chris, so much for catching up with us.
Thank you.
And we look forward to speaking with you very shortly as our expert on all things fashion and tartan and textile Scotland. Thank you for your knowledge and your help.
No, thank you for having me. And I look forward to kind of bringing some more updates soon. Thank you, Camilla.
Thank you.